looks like the sun's out today, although it is cloudy still, but more blue skies. And what's going on today? This was kind of an interesting read. I know when people usually build stuff, they try to buy parts, but what happens if it's fake? And in this case, for military use, this one here says, Russian military used fake parts ripping off Irish firm for Ukraine spy drone. The unmanned aerial vehicle downed by Ukrainian forces has undergone an autopsy carried out by a research group investigating arms flows around the world. The parts carry uncharacteristic markings wrongly suggesting they were made by manufacturer Tolotzin. A 3-year investigation by Conflict Armament Research found. Imagine that, using really important equipment for the military and it doesn't have, I guess, genuine parts, so to speak. It says the evidence suggests there is a global marketplace of fake parts which are being used to circumvent a ban by the West, preventing goods from reaching the Russian military. The drone was among material and weapon systems deployed by Russian-backed insurgents in Ukraine's Donbas region who have been fighting government forces since 2014. It almost sounds like how you would determine if you bought like a fake product just as a consumer, because they're saying things, for example, the fonts and letters, they're inconsistent, and some equipment, it says here, missing pins and a stamp with an unusual orientation. So it makes me wonder if using, let's just say it's this drone, would that actually compromise, I guess, the safety of it as well? Imagine being in a war where you get your parts from a country that is against you and they supply you with, I guess, bad parts, so by the time you use it in a war situation, hey, what's going on? It's falling out of the sky and so forth. That would be so like dirty in terms of the tactics, huh? And as everyone knows here in Canada, the Emergencies Act was put in place, which apparently gives them powers as if we're in some kind of, quote, I guess, war. People are dying and so forth, so people are wondering why. They say it's to deal with the recent protests with that freedom convoy, but it doesn't make sense even legally, what it seems like anyways, from what they say. They said there's no real legal reason. It doesn't pass various, quote, tests. I guess that's up for people like lawyers to duke it out in that sense, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of provinces that are agreeing with it. So what kind of impact has this had so far? I guess one thing it did do, which was kind of interesting, remember with that story with the Freedom Convoy people, like the protests, a lot of people were crowdfunding it. They initially started with a GoFundMe, but people like the police, for example, like in Ottawa, they were actively trying to get them to shut down, which I guess they were able to do so. But I guess today with this news, it says RCMP and OPP set up command center in Ottawa as police chief Peter Sloly resigns. And this is the guy that was in that video that was really pushing it for it. So what happened afterwards, huh? It says the chief of the Ottawa police abruptly resigned Tuesday, while the Mounties and Ontario provincial police are working closely with the local force to respond to the chaotic anti-government protests that continues to paralyze the downtown core. Peter Sloly, who's only held the job since October 2019, had come under heavy criticism for the perceived inaction of the Ottawa Police Service against the protesters who've occupied Ottawa for more than 2 weeks. So that's kind of interesting. Just like that, right after the Emergencies Act announcement, the guy is gone. It's kind of interesting because it makes you wonder, what exactly did this do, like this act? And it seems like from reading some of the articles, it says here Trudeau vows to freeze anti-mandate protesters' bank accounts. And it says here, Mr. Trudeau said the scope of the measures would be time-limited, reasonable and proportionate, and would not see the military deployed. With no need for court orders, banks can freeze personal accounts of anyone linked with the protests. Hundreds of demonstrators remain in Canada's capital city. That's what got me to think, actually, and it's actually kind of worrisome because there you could have the perspective of, oh good, they're not going to send like the military and start shooting citizens on the ground, for example. It's only, quote, bank account information and stuff like that. But really think about it, actually, because recently, as you guys know, that Give Send Go had their database, I guess, compromised, hacked, where the people, whoever did it, had all of the donors' information in terms of their name, their email, who donated funds and stuff like that. And then coincidentally, now you have this, the Emergencies Act, where by the sounds of it, the focus is here to control, I guess, bank accounts and money and so forth. So is that in relation with the timing and stuff like that? That's what I would be worried, because obviously the concern would be, you call out an act that seems like it's more meant for some kind of literal war. So there's no rational explanation, but that would be kind of more rational, isn't it? So now that you have that data that's hacked out there, you can just go after, I guess, them. You could argue, depending on what side you're on and your mentality, you could say, good, go after all those guys. But for me, again, I try to strip down topics to the bare bone. That is concerning, where if you're telling me you're going after people just because they're expressing like a voice or whatever that you disagree with, and now you have this, I guess, weapon or ability to go after them because you disagree with them, that is concerning in my opinion, because it just doesn't make sense in the other aspect of terms of, like, say, violence and all that. And I even mentioned before, with the way the situation has morphed, it's not just, quote, truckers anymore. You see like regular people of various backgrounds, like, for example, actual war veterans and stuff like that protesting against it. So technically they would be like a terrorist now too if they just go up there and say, I disagree with this, or let's just say they donated $1 to the cause. It doesn't sound right. And interestingly enough, I mean, if you want to talk about things like, I don't know, something that requires an emergency and all that, if this is considered terrorists in an emergency way, I mean, recently here locally, there were protesters that actually took down a statue, literally took it down and all that. I personally have not seen anything like that so far when it comes to these types of protests, yet there I don't see you calling, for example, the military to go after them, because that would be crazy, correct, to actually do that. It seems like during times like these, it's more important than ever not to judge anything irrationally or emotionally. Use some critical thinking, because interestingly enough, remember that story recently where there were veterans that removed a fencing around the war memorial because they wanted to peacefully, I guess, protest around it and all that? I mean, it seemed like it was perfectly fine, correct? But even I mentioned, depending on your mindset, you could easily read one headline, see a screenshot saying, war memorial fence removed. You could easily go into rage mode saying, get rid of those guys now, look what they're doing. But that's not the case though, correct? Well, like, when you really look at it, they're not trying to destroy it or anything like that. But then when I was looking at some videos today, I guess, with all those politics stuff, which I usually try to avoid, you can see here, apparently Trudeau, it says, made a comment about that, which kind of implies what they were doing, if this is the same situation, was so crazy and bad that justifies his actions, I guess, that you can see.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, we see that even in a moment of extremely challenging times, when people are moving forward with responsible leadership and responsible tools, the Conservatives can't help themselves but play crass political games and divide. The Conservative member for Provencher just yesterday embraced the leaders of this blockade and amplified their cause. The Conservative member for Yorkton Melville said this weekend that blockaders who ripped down fencing around our national war memorial are patriots.
So like there, what do you believe? You have the pictures and the videos from all the people capturing it. You can just judge it based on what was like said there, just be outraged at the fact that, quote, somebody removed the fencing and so forth. Or would you actually take the time, sit there, doesn't matter if you hate that, so to speak, group or whatever, judge for yourself what is going on. Because to me, it would feel like a situation where someone's debating about, let's say, drone regulations and justifying over-the-top ones, where I would say it doesn't make sense. Look at all these people here. They're just flying a, quote, toy. It's for fun. It makes no sense. And then you have, like, say, I don't know, some politician or something like come out and say, Gatwick, remember that? All that disruption, people's holidays and so forth. If it hit an airplane, it would have killed someone. So it's in the best interest of, like, Canadians and so forth. Whereas you guys in the know, obviously, you would say, Gatwick, that's your excuse. That one that was proven to be like, what, nothing so far? However, unfortunately, the mass majority of people would look at it, just read the headline, not do their research, and go with it, right? That's why I said it's important as ever, it seems like, to actually judge things critically and really look into it. I think in times like this, it's good not to really, quote, I guess, care too much about politics and being blind to it. Like I said, when people start talking about lefts and right, I personally don't care. I just base it on the facts. All right, see you guys later.